Well, here we are in Los Angeles, and I'm just preparing to do the last of nearly 600 concerts that I've done for the King Singers here in North America. And a very special country it is too. I think in some ways, dare I say it, we're more popular here now than we are in our own country. I think programs like The Tonight Show that the group appeared on many times in the 80s have a lot to do with that. And it gives that every concert that kind of special, one would almost say, star status. It's a place that I've immensely enjoyed touring. I've just put together a few memories of special times here. My very first tour, which was partly over here to the West Coast, there had been quite a serious earthquake in Los Angeles, and we came to sing at UCLA, but the concert hall had been damaged, and the concert had to be moved to the Westwood Auditorium, I think it was called. And we debated whether to do a song which had recently come back into the repertoire called Good Vibrations, and wondered whether the audience would mind, and we decided they would, and we ran it by the management. And so the encore that night, in honour of the earthquake, was Good Vibrations, and the audience did indeed find it quite funny. And actually that evening we didn't find it quite so funny ourselves, because we felt quite a large aftershock in our hotel rooms in the middle of the night, and several of us rather dramatically rang home. And all as well, but definitely the furniture was shaking a bit like that. Can you hear that? So that's that. And then later that year we came back here. In fact, we did 4 tours to the US that year, and we came back to a place called Green Bay, Wisconsin. Actually, no, Green Bay, Wisconsin, I'm wrong, was in the February of '94, my second tour. And the weather was really bad up in Wisconsin. We had intended to drive to Milwaukee to meet the folks at Hal Leonard Corporation, who had recently started publishing our music. But we basically had to turn the hire car around because of the snow, and we were snowed in at the hotel. And we went to the bar, all 6 of us, which is quite unusual, and still is, I think. Actually, although not as unusual as it has been in former years. They were doing karaoke in the bar that night, and several of us got up and sang solos, not terribly well, but at the end we thought, well, we've been learning our arrangement of Crocodile Rock, why don't we actually try it out on these folks? And so having heard several of us sing not particularly good pop solos, I mean, you know, they were in tune and they were the right notes, but we're not really pop singers. We then got up as a group and sang this very complex arrangement of Crocodile Rock, and people sort of like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? It's quite a nice moment. The next year we were back in the West Coast in March in '95 and did a concert in Davies Hall, San Francisco, with Richard Rodney Bennett. That was very memorable. He's a fantastic musician, and he played the piano for his Gershwin arrangements, and also listened to us rehearse a little bit of one of his own pieces, and it was extraordinary how astute his musical ear was. And Bob Chilcott arranged a Jimmy Webb song called The Piano, which we sang as well as the encore, and that was marvellous. And later that year we were in New York in December as the guests of the New York Pops Orchestra. And that was wonderful because that was in Carnegie Hall, and I remember, despite it being a Christmas concert, they had hardly any decorations. In fact, if you look behind you on the stage, there was one kind of wreath. It was a bit like the last night of the proms, you know, just this wreath. So at my announcement I said, well, good evening ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here in Carnegie Hall, and it's great to see that the management have spared no expense with the Christmas decorations. Unfortunately, they took that okay as well. The conductor of that night was their resident conductor, Skitch Henderson, and he's sadly no longer with us, but after one of the rehearsals I asked him, why are you called Skitch? And he said, well, my musical director that I used to have, if he wanted a tune arranged, he would say, "Henderson, go and sketch this out for me." And I said, "Oh, I see, it makes sense now." And who was the musical director? He said, "Oh, it's Bing Crosby." And I was sort of, wow, you know. And he was a great guy. I think he was a Spitfire pilot in the war as well. An extraordinary character. So they're very memorable concerts they were. The next year, '96, we flew over all the way just for one thing, which was to record with the Boston Pops Orchestra under Keith Lockhart. And we were guests on their album called Running Wild, which was of Glenn Miller classics. And that in itself was a marvellous experience because there was a fantastic orchestra, of course, and it was in Boston Symphony Hall. And then we flew back. So that was just a one-off. Funnily enough, the concert in the diary just before the Boston recording was also Boston, but Boston, Lincolnshire. Which is an extraordinary coincidence, two Bostons next door to each other in the diary. Next year, '97, I remember in March we came over to New York and sang for the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, which was founded by Michael Kamen, the film writer, to basically to donate musical instruments to schools which were underfunded. And he himself conducted this concert. And it so happened that we had made a record of film music called The Circle of Life, on which we put the song from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Everything I Do, which, if you remember, I think stayed in the charts in England for almost longer than any other song at the time. And that song was written by Michael Kamen. And so that was great to sing that in New York with Michael Kamen conducting. And we had a guest conductor that night. I'm not quite sure why he was there, and he's not really a musician, he's an actor. And that was Richard Dreyfuss, and it was great to meet him as well, because he's the little guy on Jaws. Remember of course you know the film Jaws. So it was fantastic to talk to him about that film particularly, and you know how scary those sharks really were or weren't. In '98, in November, I remember we came over to Nashville, sang in the Nashville Arena as guests of Sweet Adelines, which is basically the women's barbershop organisation over here. And memorable, of course, because the concert was packed with basically all women, screaming and shouting. And not only that, but they also filled the hotel that we were staying in. And so every so often, you know, there would be impromptu performances of barbershop outside your door, and then some from up above and below. And basically quite hard to sleep that night. But, you know, they were really enthusiastic, and it was a great time. In 2002, we came over to do a tour with Emanuel Ax, the great pianist, and that was for me a very special experience, because I remembered him from my teen years when he was starting out as a concert pianist, and he used to warm up every afternoon when we got to our rehearsal. We would do our normal thing, get the stands ready, and he would be there doing his scales and arpeggios, which I found it extraordinary for somebody that brilliant, but you know, I suppose that's why he's brilliant. And I just went over to him once and said, "Hey Manny, you know, what are you working on at the moment, or what's your next thing?" He said, "Oh, doing Brahms' Second Piano Concerto." "Oh wow, one of my favourites." And he said, "Oh, here's the opening." He played the opening of Brahms 2 just in front of me. That was fantastic. And actually we met up with him a few years later somewhere else where we were performing, and he was going to be on that night just as we were leaving. And we met at the top of the hotel by chance, and I said to him, "Oh, Manny, what are you doing here?" You know, and this time he was doing Brahms' first piano concerto, and I said, "That is my favourite piano concerto. I really wish I could stay." And he said, I don't know if I can use the actual word, but he said, "I usually manage to get up." Because it's so difficult, and I feel like getting up and saying, "Hey, it's not my fault, I practiced." So, as we left the hotel, I was able to say to one of the greatest concert pianists the world has ever known, "Good luck tonight, Manny, don't get up." That's still the last time I've seen him. In 2006, we were guests of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and we did the broadcast that they do every Sunday morning. I think they've been doing it since about 1910, every Sunday, apart from war years. And it gets done. It gets recorded one Sunday, and as the recording is being done, the show that was recorded the week before is broadcast live. So it's kind of an ongoing thing like that. And we turned up quite early with not very much time. And this happened to be my birthday. It was in February. And Craig Jessup, who was conducting, was obviously hassled. You know, so come on, we've got to get quiet in your places quickly. Okay, Kingsley's ready. And right, just one thing before we start. Organ, please. And there's this huge D major 7 chord. And I thought, what's going on? That's not the chord for our piece. And the entire Mormon Tabernacle Choir, all, 400 of them, sang Happy Birthday to me with full organ in the Mormon Tabernacle. I actually was in the conference centre, the new conference centre. It was a really awesome experience. It really did bring tears to my eyes. It was very moving. And the following year, we were invited by them to be the guests on their Christmas DVD that they now do every year, and which becomes a national video project. And that was extraordinary because the conference centre that they had built about 10 years ago holds 23,000 people, and they sold, as they always do, it wasn't just because of us, but they sold it out 3 nights running, and they filled the Mormon Tabernacle Choir 3 nights running, which holds 5,000 people, and had a screen in there where people could watch it. So we sang over 3 nights to nearly 100,000 people, and then the video was sold later on, and that's an awesome experience, walking out to what is like a kind of, you know, Division 2 football crowd, although not quite as noisy. And those shows went very well. It was very, very good to do that with them. The following year, 2008, we were back in Carnegie Hall with the New York Pops, and this time Marilyn Horne was a guest, and she came on and sang Silent Night and one other piece with us. Tim, you'll remember that, I'm sure. He's holding the camera, by the way. And that was special. She's a real legend. And then only earlier this year we performed for the first time for a long, long time, certainly since I've been in the group, in Boston, and that was as part of the Boston Early Music Festival. And that was a very special occasion because it is such a respected festival, and we worked hard for that show. We brought back our card game pieces, Il Gioco di Primiera by Alessandro Stridio, this 16th century piece about a card game where we acted out playing cards. And a little bit of the end of it got on YouTube as well. You could check that out if you want to see Tim dancing. So that was a great show, and I actually met somebody I hadn't seen for 30 years after that show, so that sort of rounded it off nicely. As somebody I was at university with came up and spoke to me after we went for a drink. So lots of memories, lots of friends. On the subject of friends, not only her, but you know, I've met so many people and made so many friends in all corners of this country, for which I'm immensely grateful. I'm sure it's not the last time I'll come back. But anyway, hope you enjoyed my little tour of the last 18 years of the States. Bye.